Welcome back to LPW Update, your number one source for the deepest insights and exclusive analysis into the world of Little People, Big World. What happens when the cameras stop rolling? What conversations take place behind closed doors in the quiet moments that truly define a family's future? Today, we are pulling back the curtain on a story that has been brewing in the shadows, a toxic betrayal that threatens to shatter the very foundation of the Roloff family. We're investigating a devastating secret campaign, a calculated poisoning of the well, allegedly orchestrated by Caryn Chandler to turn the Roloff children against their own mother, Amy. This isn't just about farm drama or business disagreements. This is about a quiet, insidious war for the heart of a family, and the collateral damage could be irreparable. We have pieced together insider reports and exclusive theories to bring you the full, shocking story. If you believe in family loyalty and want to uncover the truth behind the smiles and sound bites, then prove it right now by hitting that like button. Make sure you're subscribed to LPBW Update and ring that notification bell, because you are not going to want to miss a single second of this developing story. This is the one you've been waiting for. To understand the sheer audacity of this alleged campaign, we must first understand the landscape. The Roloff family, post-divorce, exists in a delicate, often tense balance. Amy has moved on, happily remarried to Chris Merrick, building a new life away from the farm that defined her for 3 decades. Matt remains on the farm with Caryn Chandler, his former farm manager turned long-term partner, firmly by his side. On the surface, it's a modern, blended family navigating a complex new reality. But our sources suggest that beneath this fragile peace, a strategic power play has been unfolding. Caryn Chandler, no longer content with being just Dad's girlfriend, has reportedly been maneuvering to establish herself as the undisputed matriarch of the Roloff clan. And the primary obstacle to that goal, in her eyes, has always been Amy's deep, unbreakable bond with her 4 children. If Caryn couldn't break that bond, she would have to poison it from within. The campaign didn't begin with a bang, but with a whisper. Insiders describe a series of carefully orchestrated, private, and concerned conversations. Caryn, leveraging her position of trust and daily proximity to Matt, began planting subtle seeds of doubt in the minds of Zach, Jeremy, Molly, and Jacob. Each conversation was a masterclass in manipulation, tailored specifically to the personality and vulnerabilities of the child she was speaking to. Her first target, we believe, was Zach. Zach's connection to the farm is primal. It's his history, his heritage, and the source of his deepest, most public frustrations with his father. Caryn allegedly used this raw nerve to her advantage. In a quiet moment, perhaps while watching Jackson and Lila play on the lawn of Matt's new house, she would have turned to Zach with a sigh of feigned sadness. "You know, Zach," she might have begun, her voice laced with manufactured concern. "I worry so much about your mom. It's wonderful that she's so happy with Chris in her new life, truly. But sometimes, it feels like she was so eager to leave the farm behind. She forgot she was leaving a piece of the family behind, too. She barely asks about you and Tori and the kids, unless the cameras are right there. It's like this whole part of her life, the part with you at the center, is just a memory she's trying to forget." Notice the genius of this approach. It's not a direct attack. It's framed as worry. She validates Amy's new happiness, making her sound reasonable and supportive. But the poison is in the subtext. Amy is selfish. Amy is performative. Amy's love for her son and grandchildren is only for show. For Zach, who has felt overlooked and undervalued in the farm negotiations, this seed of doubt finds fertile ground. It aligns with his own quiet fears that his mother's departure from the farm was also a departure from him. He might not believe it entirely, but the seed is planted. The next time Amy calls, he might be a little cooler, a little more distant, wondering if her questions are genuine or just for show. Next came Jeremy. Jeremy, the ambitious entrepreneur, the visionary, the one who, alongside his wife Audrey, has built a brand centered on intention, legacy, and family values. Caryn's approach to him would have been entirely different, appealing to his business acumen and his frustration with past limitations. Perhaps over a cup of coffee while discussing a potential new project for the farm, Caryn would have steered the conversation back in time. "It's so incredible watching you build your life, Jeremy," she would say, her tone full of admiration. "You have such a clear vision. It reminds me of that one pumpkin season years ago. Remember how stressed your mom was? Every new idea you or your dad had, she'd find 100 reasons why it wouldn't work. The budget, the liability, the stress. I know she meant well, but that kind of fear can really hold a family back. Honestly, it's probably for the best that she's not involved in the farm's future anymore, for her own mental health, and for the farm to finally grow without that constant brake being pulled." Again, the manipulative brilliance is staggering. She frames Amy's practicality and maternal caution not as responsible, but as a negative, dream-killing force. She positions herself as an ally of Jeremy's ambition while subtly painting Amy as an obstacle to his success. She even twists it into a statement of concern for Amy's mental health, a recurring theme in her campaign. For Jeremy, who has always wanted to innovate and expand, this reframes his entire history. Suddenly, past disagreements with his mom aren't just mother-son squabbles, they're evidence of her holding him back. The respect he has for his mother's opinion is now tinged with a new, corrosive doubt. For Molly, the most private of the Roloff children, the approach had to be more intimate and emotionally driven. Molly is seen as the sensible, level-headed one, living a quiet life away from the reality TV spotlight. The attack had to be delivered through a channel of perceived trust and shared maturity. This is where our sources indicate Caryn began to escalate her campaign from twisting memories to outright fabrication. It began with the invention of a crisis. According to our exclusive theory, Caryn constructed a narrative around a small, insignificant family event, perhaps a birthday party for one of the grandchildren. It was one of the first times Amy and Chris attended an event at Matt and Caryn's new home. Days later, Caryn would have called Molly, her voice hushed and trembling. "Molly," she'd whisper, "I don't know who else to talk to about this. You're always so calm and you see things so clearly. I need your advice. Your mom called me last night and she was not okay. It was after the party. I think seeing me and your dad so happy in this house, it just broke something in her. She was crying, saying all these confusing things about how I stole her life, how none of this was fair. She sounded, unstable. I'm genuinely scared for her. Please, please don't tell her I told you this. It would devastate her. I just feel like she's struggling so much more than she lets on, and I don't know how to help." This is a masterstroke of psychological warfare. She creates a crisis that never happened. She casts herself as the compassionate victim, the one Amy inexplicably attacked. She praises Molly for her wisdom, making her feel like a trusted confidant. And the masterstroke is the plea for secrecy. Don't tell her I told you. This isolates Molly with the toxic information, preventing her from going directly to Amy and discovering the truth. It fosters a secret between Caryn and Molly, a secret that paints Amy as a jealous, unstable ex-wife. Now, when Molly speaks to her mom, she's not just talking to her mother. She's observing a fragile person looking for signs of the instability Caryn described. And then there's Jacob, the prodigal son, the family's intellectual rebel who has been openly critical of the show in the artificiality of their public lives. A conventional approach wouldn't work on him. Caryn couldn't appeal to farm legacy or business ambition. So she allegedly co-opted his own worldview and turned it into a weapon against his mother. She would have found a moment alone with him, perhaps when he and Isabel were visiting with their son, Mateo. She would approach him not as a stepmother figure, but as a fellow outsider. Jacob, can I be really honest with you? She might have started adopting a conspiratorial tone. I know you see through all the bulls. You always have, and I respect it so much. That's why I think all of this must be so hard for you, watching it from the inside. Especially with your mom. I see how much she needs the public validation, the fanfare from the show. It's like she's playing a character, the little Mama Roloff, and sometimes I think she forgets who she really is. It must have been so difficult growing up with a mother who was so focused on her public image. I just hope now, with her new life, she can find a way to be happy without needing the whole world to be watching. This is perhaps the most insidious manipulation of all. She aligns herself with Jacob's known criticisms of the show, making it seem like they are on the same side. She frames Amy's long career and public persona, a persona that provided for her family for years, not as a job, but as a deep-seated psychological flaw, a need for validation. She suggests that Amy's love for her family is secondary to her love of fame. For Jacob, who has actively rejected that fame, this is a powerful and destructive narrative. It validates his own feelings of alienation while simultaneously eroding the foundation of his relationship with his mother, recasting his childhood through a lens of neglect and artifice. With these seeds of doubt firmly planted, the fallout was slow, subtle, but undeniable. Amy started to feel it first as a vague sense of distance. Phone calls with her children felt shorter, more perfunctory. When she'd ask Zach about the kids, his answers would be clipped. He'd say, "They're fine, Mom," but he wouldn't offer the funny little anecdotes he used to. He'd ask her, "Are you doing okay?" With a strange emphasis that she couldn't decipher. It felt less like a question and more like an accusation. She started to feel like she was being managed, handled with kid gloves for a reason she couldn't comprehend. When she talked to Jeremy, he would steer the conversation away from anything personal or deep. If she brought up a memory from the farm, he would change the subject. It felt like he was building a wall around their shared past, a past that Caryn had successfully reframed as a time of negativity and stifled ambition. He was polite, but he was distant. The easy warmth that had always defined their relationship was replaced by a cautious, formal courtesy. The change in Molly was perhaps the most painful. Their calls, which used to be filled with laughter and easy conversation, became punctuated by awkward silences. Molly seemed to be weighing her words, analyzing Amy's tone for any sign of emotional distress. Amy could feel her daughter studying her, searching for the cracks that Caryn had told her were there. Amy would end the calls feeling confused and deeply hurt, wondering what she had done to make her own daughter look at her with such pity and concern. Amy confided in Chris, her frustration and sadness mounting. "I don't understand what's happening," she would say, pacing their kitchen. "It's like they're all in on a secret that I'm not privy to. It feels like I've done something horribly wrong, but no one will tell me what it is. Zach, Jeremy, Molly, it's like there's a sheet of glass between us. I can see them, I can hear them, but I can't reach them. They're my children, Chris. Why are they pulling away from me?" Chris, ever the supportive husband, could only offer comfort, but he too was at a loss. They were on the outside, looking in at a family dynamic that was being deliberately and systematically poisoned against them. Caryn, meanwhile, watched her plan unfold with quiet satisfaction. She would see the strained interactions at family gatherings. She would hear from Matt how the kids were so worried about Amy lately. Each pained look on Amy's face, each moment of confused silence from the kids was a victory. She was consolidating her power, not by being loud and demanding, but by being the calm, stable center in a storm of her own creation. She was the one Matt and the kids could turn to for a rational perspective. She was becoming the indispensable hub of the family, while Amy was being slowly, painfully pushed to the periphery. The matriarch's throne was nearly hers, but in her confidence, she made a critical error. She underestimated the one thing she could never poison: the deep, resilient, and ultimately unbreakable bond between four siblings who had grown up together, fought together, and loved each other through every imaginable storm. The whispers were about to turn into a roar, and the web of lies was on the verge of its spectacular collapse. The slip-up was coming, and with it, a confrontation that would change the Roloff family forever. The fragile peace, bought with strained smiles and carefully chosen words, could not hold. For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction, and the pressure Caryn had been applying to the delicate bonds of the Roloff family was building towards a catastrophic release. The tipping point, as is so often the case, was not a grand, dramatic event, but a simple, unguarded conversation between two brothers. The setting was the farm, the one place that holds all their history and all their pain. Zach and Jeremy were there on a rare, quiet afternoon, helping their dad with a small fencing project near the wedding barn. The kids were running around, their laughter echoing in the crisp Oregon air, a poignant soundtrack to the conversation that would change everything. They worked in a comfortable silence for a while, the familiar rhythm of their labor, a throwback to their teenage years. It was Jeremy who broke the silence, his brow furrowed with a thought that had clearly been weighing on him. "Hey," he said, leaning on a fence post and looking over at Zach. "Can I ask you something? Have you noticed, I don't know, that Mom seems a little off lately?" Zach stopped what he was doing, wiping sweat from his forehead with the back of his glove. He looked at his twin, a flicker of recognition in his eyes. "Off how?" he asked, his voice cautious. Jeremy hesitated, trying to find the right words. "Just kind of fragile, like she's not really coping with everything as well as she says she is. Caryn mentioned she's really been worried about her, said her mental health seems a bit shaky since she left the farm for good." Zach's head snapped up. It was the phrase, the specific pseudo-clinical phrase that set off an alarm bell in his mind. "Caryn said that to you about her mental health?" Jeremy nodded. "Yeah, she said she thinks Mom resents how well the farm is doing without her, and it's causing her a lot of stress. That she was always the one holding things back because she couldn't handle the pressure." The words hung in the air between them. For a moment, there was only the sound of the wind and the distant shouts of their children. Zach's expression hardened. "That's funny," he said slowly, his voice low and dangerous, "because Caryn told me something different. She told me she was worried about Mom because she's so obsessed with her new life that she's forgotten about us, that she only asks about the grandkids when the cameras are on to keep up appearances." The two brothers stared at each other, the implications of what they were saying slowly dawning on them. It was like two separate puzzle pieces, meaningless on their own, suddenly clicking together to reveal a sinister picture. "Wait a minute," Jeremy said, taking a step closer. "She told you Mom was ignoring us for her new life? She told me Mom was obsessed with us in the farm because she couldn't let go." Zach's mind was racing, connecting the dots. "She told me Mom was selfish. She told you Mom was jealous. She's painting two completely different pictures to two different people. Why would she do that?" And then the final, devastating piece fell into place. "Dude," Zach said, his eyes wide, "what did she tell you about the meltdown?" Jeremy's face went pale. "What meltdown?" "The one at Jackson's birthday party a few weeks back, when she supposedly called Caryn crying and saying all this crazy stuff." "Yes," Zach exclaimed, throwing his hands up in frustration. "She told me about that too. She swore to secrecy, said she didn't want to upset Dad or anyone else, but she was just so concerned about Mom's stability." Jeremy ran a hand through his hair, his mind reeling. Me too, word for word, so concerned, she made it sound like I was the only one she trusted enough to tell. She made me promise not to say anything to Mom, that it would just make her spiral. They stood there in stunned silence, the full scope of the manipulation washing over them. It wasn't just a few offhand comments. It was a systematic, calculated campaign. Caryn had been feeding them tailored lies, poisoning their perception of their own mother, and using their love for her as the weapon. She had isolated them from each other with pleas for secrecy, turning them into unwitting pawns in her twisted game to seize control of the family narrative. The anger that rose in them was swift and searing. They had been played, and worse, they had let it affect their relationship with their mom. They had been distant, cautious, and judgmental, all based on a foundation of carefully constructed lies. The first call they made was to Molly. They put the phone on speaker, their faces grim. "Molly, it's Zach and Jer," Zach began. "We need to ask you something important, and we need you to be totally honest. Has Caryn said anything to you recently about Mom?" There was a pause on the other end of the line. Molly's voice, when it came, was hesitant. "What do you mean? Like what?" Jeremy jumped in. "Like, has she called you, all concerned, telling you that Mom is unstable or having a hard time?" The silence on the phone stretched for a long, agonizing moment. Then, Molly's voice, barely a whisper. "How did you know? She called me last week. She told me Mom had a huge meltdown after seeing her and Dad together and called her up crying. She made me promise not to tell anyone. She said she was worried Mom was having some kind of breakdown." "It was a lie, Moll," Zach said, his voice firm. "It never happened. She told us the same story, different details, same lie. She's been playing all of us." A small, sharp intake of breath came through the speaker, the sound of a daughter realizing she'd been made to doubt her own mother. "Oh my God," Molly said, her voice thick with emotion. "I knew something felt wrong. Every time I talked to Mom, I was looking for something, waiting for her to fall apart, and she just seemed normal. I thought she was just good at hiding it." The brothers then laid out the different stories Caryn had told them, the contradictory narratives designed to prey on their individual insecurities. With each revelation, Molly's quiet dismay turned to cold fury. Their next call was to Jacob. They knew he would have a different perspective. When they explained the situation, there was no shock or surprise in Jacob's voice, only a weary, bitter confirmation of everything he had suspected for years. "Of course she did," Jacob said, his tone laced with cynicism. "This is what I've been talking about forever. It's a game. It's all about controlling the narrative for the show and for the family. She told me that Mom was a phony, that her whole life was just a performance for the cameras. She was trying to align with me to get me on her side by pretending to hate the same things I do." He paused. "The joke's on her. I don't pick sides, but I do know who my mother is. I'm glad you guys finally see what's been happening." The four siblings, separated by miles but united by this shared betrayal, made a pact. The lies had to stop, and there was only one way to do it. But first, there was a far more important call to make. They arranged a four-way video call, and when their mother's face appeared on their screens, they saw the familiar, loving eyes that had been looking back at them their whole lives, now clouded with the confusion and hurt they had put there. Zach took the lead, his voice shaking slightly. "Mom," he began, "we need to talk to you. And first, we need to apologize. All of us. We are so, so sorry." Amy looked at her children, her expression shifting from confusion to deep concern. "Sorry for what? What's wrong?" One by one, they unburdened themselves. They told her everything. They confessed the seeds of doubt Caryn had planted, the fabricated stories she had spun, the lies they had partially believed. They told her how Caryn had framed her as selfish, as unstable, as jealous, as a phony. With each word, the lines of worry on Amy's face began to soften, replaced by a dawning, heartbreaking understanding. The distance she'd felt, the cautious conversations, the strange questions, it all suddenly made a terrible, painful sense. She wasn't going crazy. Her children hadn't mysteriously fallen out of love with her. They had been systematically turned against her. Tears streamed down her face, but they weren't tears of sadness, but of profound relief. The wall of glass between them shattered into a million pieces. "Oh, my babies," she said, her voice thick with emotion as she looked at the faces of her 4 grown children on the screen. "You don't have to apologize to me. You were manipulated by someone you thought you could trust. That's not your fault. The only thing that matters is that you're talking to each other and you're talking to me now. The truth is out." In that moment, the damage Caryn had inflicted began to heal. The poison was being drawn from the well. The siblings' apology and Amy's instant, unconditional forgiveness forged their bond into something stronger than steel. Caryn Chandler had tried to tear them apart, but she had only succeeded in creating an unbreakable, unified front. And that front was now heading for a direct confrontation. The next evening, the 4 of them drove to the farm. They walked up to the new house, Matt's grand dream home, which now felt like the scene of a crime. They found Matt and Caryn on the back patio, enjoying a glass of wine as the sun set. They looked up, surprised but pleased to see all 4 kids together. "Hey, what a great surprise," Matt said, beaming. "What brings you all out here?" Caryn smiled, the picture of a welcoming hostess. "Can I get anyone a drink?" Her smile faltered slightly as she took in their expressions. There were no smiles, no easy greetings. Only 4 identical looks of grim determination. Zach stepped forward, acting as the chosen spokesperson. "We're not here for a drink, Dad. We're here to talk to Caryn." Matt looked confused, glancing from Zach to Caryn, who was now looking visibly nervous. "What's this about?" Matt asked. Zach never took his eyes off Caryn. "Caryn," he said, his voice steady and clear, "we know what you've been doing. We know about the lies you've been telling." Caryn forced a laugh, but it was brittle and high-pitched. "Lies? Zach, what on earth are you talking about? I would never lie to you kids." Jeremy stepped up beside his brother. "Really? You told Zach that Mom only cares about us when the cameras are on. But you told me she was so obsessed with the farm she couldn't let go. Which one is it, Caryn? Is she a neglectful mother or a jealous ex-wife? You can't have it both ways." Caryn's face went white. She looked at Matt, a plea for help in her eyes. "Matt, I don't know what they're talking about. This is crazy." Matt, looking utterly bewildered, tried to intervene. "Okay, kids, let's all just calm down. I'm sure this is just a big misunderstanding." It was Molly who spoke next, her voice quiet but ringing with authority. "It's not a misunderstanding, Dad. Caryn, you called me. You told me Mom had a meltdown and called you crying. You told me she was unstable. You made me promise not to tell anyone because you were so concerned. You told Zach and Jeremy the exact same story." Caryn began to sputter. I was worried. Amy, she was having a hard time. I was trying to protect her and to protect all of you." Jacob, who had been silent until now, let out a short, sharp, humorless laugh. "Protect us? By feeding us poison? You told me my mom's entire life was fake, that she was just a character for TV. You tried to use my own criticisms of the show against my own mother. You went to each of us separately and fed us a story you thought we would believe. You played on our fears, on our history. You tried to isolate us and turn us against her." The weight of their combined testimony was crushing. Matt looked from the furious, united faces of his 4 children to the panicked, crumbling expression of the woman he loved. The foundation of his world was cracking beneath his feet. "Caryn, is this true?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. "Did you say these things?" "They're twisting my words," she insisted, her voice rising in desperation. "I was coming from a place of love and concern." Zach shook his head, his face a mask of disappointment. "No," he said flatly. "A place of concern is calling all of us together and saying, hey, I'm worried about Amy. Let's talk about how we can support her. A place of manipulation is calling us one by one, telling us contradictory lies, and making us promise to keep it a secret. You weren't trying to protect Mom. You were trying to replace her. You were poisoning the well so we'd only drink from your cup. But it's over. The confrontation ended with no resolution, only the deafening silence of shattered trust. Caryn's plan had not just failed, it had backfired in the most spectacular way imaginable. She had set out to become the undisputed matriarch, to sever the bonds between Amy and her children. Instead, she had exposed herself as a manipulative force within the family. She had inadvertently revealed the depth of the children's loyalty to their mother and had handed them the one thing they hadn't had in years, a single unifying cause. Her credibility was destroyed, not just with the kids, but likely with Matt as well, who was now forced to re-examine the last several years of his life through this new, horrifying lens. The Roloff children walked away from that house, not as four separate individuals, but as a solid, impenetrable unit. Their bond with their mother, Amy, not just repaired, but reinforced and stronger than it had ever been before. The secret smear campaign was over, the toxic betrayal exposed, and the balance of power in the Roloff family had been forever changed. What do you think of this shocking turn of events? Was Caryn's alleged campaign a calculated power grab or a series of misguided concerns? Will the family ever be able to recover from this deep betrayal? Let us know your explosive theories down in the comments below. And be sure to stay subscribed to LPBW Update because we'll be tracking every piece of fallout from this story as it continues to develop. You won't want to miss what happens next.